The wind moves across the desert like breath across an ancient altar. Beneath it, stories remain half buried. Not myths, not metaphors, but memories. Memories of cities swallowed by time, of beings not born of earth, but written into it. They came from beyond, not merely from stars, but from a higher command of reality. They carved their symbols in stone. They walked as kings, but ruled as gods. And in the dust of their departure, we remain. Before Egypt rose from the Nile, before pyramids touched the sky, there was Sumer, cradle of language, numbers, law, and order. It was here that the human story took a sharp and deliberate turn. A story not of evolution alone, but of intervention. This wasn't a garden, it was a lab. Eridu, Uruk, Lagash, ancient cities that now whisper only to dust and scholars. They were not just homes for men, they were stations, where divine emissaries walked among humans. The Anunnaki, those who came from the heavens, did not observe. They engineered. Civilization did not rise. It was installed. On clay, they wrote, not poetry, not prayer, blueprints. Sumerian cuneiform is the oldest known written code, and it tells us the gods were not passive. They created humanity, not with love, but with utility. In the Atrahasis epic, the gods grow tired of labour, so they fashion humans, a mix of divine blood and earth, to bear the burden. We were not gifted life, we were assigned it. The myth is clear, the intent unmistakable. Humanity was made to serve. We weren't born, we were built, not to soar, but to harvest. The gods shaped us to tend their fields, mine their resources, maintain their order. And so began the first ritual of control, of the coding of flesh. But something went unfinished. Something slipped through the edit. A glitch. A spark. Something they couldn't predict. The Anunnaki did not merely govern cities, they governed reality. Their symbols were laws, their decrees physics. They embedded their power into ritual, architecture, language. Not just temples, but programs. For the Sumerians, the divine wasn't a mystery. It was a management system, and every citizen was a user of someone else's code. Within the Anunnaki pantheon, unity was an illusion. Two powers vied beneath the surface, Enki and Enlil. Enki, Lord of Waters, the wise, the subversive, the whisperer. Enlil, Lord of Command, the stern, the hierarchical, the enforcer. Enki saw in humanity the shimmer of something more. Potential. Enlil saw only a risk. A variable in an otherwise controlled system. And so began the war behind the curtain. The war for our becoming. Enki was not a hero. He was a trickster, a disruptor, a force of curiosity. He gave fire to clay, thought to labour, language to silence. He defied divine decree, not with armies, but with ideas. He taught humans to count stars, plant seeds, stitch wounds. He seeded rebellion, not through violence but through remembrance. A dangerous act in a world built on forgetting. Enlil was the firewall, the regulator. Where Enki whispered, Enlil commanded. To him, creation was hierarchy, not growth, control. He feared Enki's teachings, not for their truth, but for their potential to awaken. Awakening disrupts systems, and Enlil served the system. Their battle wasn't personal, it was archetypal. Enki and Enlil were not just brothers, they were principles. Freedom versus structure, inspiration versus order, chaos versus control. Their war still echoes, not just in temples, but in every heart. The choice between staying in the program or stepping beyond it. The heavens were not immune to fracture. As above, so below. Enki's compassion became Enlil's fear. Enlil's law became Enki's defiance. Humans became the terrain of their war. Each soul a battlefield, each dream a signal. With each act of knowledge, Enki weakened the code, Not by breaking it, but by revealing its falseness. He gave us tools, but more dangerously, he gave us questions. And questions are the root of all rebellion. Enlil, enraged, initiated a reset. The flood wasn't just water, it was a formatting of reality, a wipe, a purge, an attempt to delete the glitch. But Enki whispered again, and something survived. The gods have withdrawn, but their echo remains, in laws, in systems, in hierarchies. But so does Enki's spark, in artists, in rebels, in seekers. The code continues, but so does the rewrite. In the 1970s, a new voice joined the myth. Zecharia Sitchin, part scholar, part storyteller, introduced the Anunnaki as extraterrestrials. They came from Nibiru, he claimed, to mine gold, to breed labour. The world listened, but scholars did not, because the words Sitchin quoted weren't there. Sitchin's vision captured minds, but distorted records. He wasn't trained in Sumerian. He wasn't fluent in Akkadian. He translated symbols to fit his tale. He turned Nibiru from a celestial marker into a rogue planet. He ignored context. He rearranged myth. What he offered was compelling, but it wasn't accurate. Still, his version spread. The idea of alien engineers, cosmic miners, genetic overlords. It gave people a story big enough to hold their pain, a myth to explain the fracture, but it also distracted from the real work of remembering. So we must ask, why was this the version that spread? Why did gold eclipse spirit? Why did slavery replace awakening? Because a half-truth is easier to sell than a full awakening. Maybe Sitchin's story was allowed to rise, so we would search the stars and never find the spark inside. Symbols don't lie. They repeat. They resurface. They remember. The serpent, the ark, the twin pillars, all across cultures. The same motifs. They speak in the language of the soul, and the Anunnaki myth is written in that language, not to entertain, to initiate. The serpent, a code within the code. It sheds, it renews, it reveals. In Eden it tempts, in Egypt it crowns, in Sumer it teaches. The serpent is the rebel, the one who offers knowing, not safety, not obedience, but choice. The flood, again and again, Sumer, Babylon, Judea, Maya, Hopi, a deluge to cleanse, to erase, to begin, not always punishment, sometime protocol. The gods, discontent, the humans, awakening. A threat perceived becomes a storm unleashed. But even in the silence of drowning, one voice remained, Enki, whispering through the reeds. Atrahasis, the chosen one, not for his perfection, but for his pattern. He built an ark, not of wood, but of will, a container of memory, and through that vessel, humanity rebooted. But something stayed, a glitch that couldn't be deleted. The flood myth didn't vanish, it echoed, in every culture, in every age, a shared trauma, a buried warning, a reminder. Those who remember survive. They shaped our bodies, they coded our instincts, but they missed something. A fragment they couldn't map, the spark, consciousness, love, creativity, the fire that makes us more than function. They designed tools, but accidentally birthed gods. Now we remember, not all at once, but in pulses, in symbols, in dreams. The Anunnaki story is not just a past, it's a prophecy, that the created will awaken, that the programmed will code, and that one day, maybe today, we will write the ending. Not as slaves, not as children, but as sovereign sparks who choose to awaken.